Batman.
You are?
No, I'm Alex.
I'm Tony.
We're going to talk to you about our final impressions of the three conferences, the main three conferences, not EA and Ubisoft.
Yeah,
those
were good.
Those were kind of bonus ones that we did. So, what do you think about Microsoft's?
Microsoft's conference was very broken in half. Like, seriously.
It was kind of like two halves.
The first half was really quick. It was like their last year's conference where it was game after game after game announcement. Or at least there weren't really announcements because we knew about them.
There was only one major game announcement that was like a bit of a CG
and
trailer.
It was strange when they started getting down to actually talking about the games. That each game was so quick, they didn't promote any better than the other. Wasn't any. I mean, when they did Halo 2, there was a big arc, and this is Halo 2, and the Halo Reach is like, this is Halo Reach. Everyone wants Halo Reach. It was kind of like,
yeah, it's kind of like, here's our stuff, take it. Then they moved right into Kinect, and
it was almost like
apparently
different conference.
It was a completely different conference. They had like people that we wouldn't expect to play it, hipsters standing up telling you what they were doing. I'm chatting with my friend Lisa. Hey Lisa, how are you doing?
Hi.
Do you like Avatar? Let's watch Avatar. Boop. And then that came to be. I'm not saying that's something that's inefficient, but
it just was a weird mixing of messages. First it was extremely hardcore and aggressive, mature games, and all of a sudden we have Connectimals, Skittles. I'm like, okay, that'd be great, but it felt awkward.
I think actually what I heard is that a number of those demos were actually staged.
No, really.
Yeah, and so you weren't actually seeing a genuine playthrough of it, and that may be a problem. What would have saved the conference would have been a hardcore game, or at least one hardcore game, using Kinect.
What's interesting is Child of Eden was actually using it, and that would have been a hardcore game to show then at that conference.
That would have probably redeemed that conference. The Slim thing at the end, where they're like, we're going to give it to every one of you guys.
It's almost like they were bribing everyone.
Yeah, they've done it before, too, with HD televisions. I was at Sony. Either way, it was not really good form for them. It was also pulled a Saturday.
So I think it was kind of weird.
We don't give grades here very much, but I would say that was probably the weakest of the three, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was.
Then it goes to Nintendo.
Nintendo, I was surprised. Out of all three, this one was actually the least casual.
I think that Nintendo almost did this as an expectation. They're like, we're going to make everyone think we're going to release all these casual games, and then we're going to, every few years, just release all these hardcore games at once.
Because there was a lot of stuff there. Donkey Kong, Kirby especially.
Yeah.
Like Epic Mickey was there, GoldenEye, Golden Sun, and the 3DS. It was pretty much just
constantly.
And they cut out the fat that we didn't want. Like, they cut out they talked about Just Dance 2 and Wii Party
like a 5-10 minute.
That was the shortest part. It was like how Microsoft handled their hardcore games this year.
Yeah.
And they didn't even talk about the Vitality sensor, which people were worried about. And I'm wondering maybe that's because Nintendo's going to have a separate thing for it. Who knows?
And not a lot, and with the exception of the Zelda demo at the very beginning, everything felt like it was kept the flow going.
And as for presentation-wise, I would say that Reggie had a problem with his throat.
He was
losing his voice.
Yeah.
Besides that, it was well put together.
It was very good concept and had a whole lot.
I just think they had a bad step like in Zelda.
At the very beginning, they had a stumble, but then they were back to form. Then finally, Sony.
Sony, I think, was pretty much on par with what Sony does. Pretty much, it's the business. We'll show you what we got, and I know you're all Sony fans, so enjoy what we have to show.
Yeah. It was weird to see how many people were actually applauding to almost everything that they were showing. It was almost like it was full of nothing but Sony.
And it was actually more crowded than the Nintendo conference.
Which is expected, actually, to be honest. Because
it was actually a really big conference center.
Yeah, and they did have a lot of good games shown, but most of it were games that we already knew about.
Like, yeah, actually, they last week they announced pretty much every game that they had at this conference. The only things they did,
looking at the list right now, Twisted Metal, Sorcery. Those are the only two games that we don't know about already.
Everything else was known. Oh, Heroes on the Move was a different one. So that was a good one too.
3 games. One was Move, and 2.
I mean, they didn't even show MotorStorm 3. I mean, everyone wanted to see that.
It was very weird in my opinion, and I do say that the ending was good. It started introducing game after game after game.
But the first part felt like they were really dragging it out.
Okay,
like, why do we have to see so much of Killzone 3? I know it's epic, but why at the very beginning have this really epic game and then have really weak endness until the very end?
Rule of thumb next time, Sony. 5 montages is 4 montages too many.
And why did they have to show commercials and discuss Coca-Cola? I don't understand that.
It's like a PR meeting.
It was a PR meeting,
right.
And it was like commercials.
Let's do some con and pros for each of them, single one. First of all, Microsoft, the con.
The con was, it was so split and cut that if you were a hardcore Xbox fan, after that first half an hour, you should have just left. There was no reason to stay afterwards.
And the pro was that at least those hardcore games were really good and consistently pushed
And
out
they
for you.
really decided they really wanted to push towards this new demographic. There was a lot of good stuff, but it just was not meshed well for everyone.
At least they were consistent. Nintendo's con.
My disappointment was the Zelda presentation was really glitchy and maybe interference and everything. And besides the delay, I was also disappointed that certain games weren't there, like Pikmin 3, which they've been talking about, and even those two JRPGs, they weren't even there. And what do you think of the Pro?
The pro was probably that they had consistent amounts of games showing off almost every 10 minutes. There was something completely new. That even if there is trailers that were all there, they're probably all playable. And to be quite honest, this is why you hold off your games until the very time that you go for it. Now, the con for Sony, meanwhile, was that it was way too much of a PR thing. Everything they talked about was filled with jargon. And on top of that, it felt like, what are you talking about these commercials for? It just fattens up the whole presentation.
Why it should have been cut shorter.
Yeah. It could have been more streamlined, and quite frankly, we all suffered from problems.
As for Pro, it pretty much has a lot of good quality Sony material. A lot of things we've been wanting, such as Gran Turismo 5. And they finally they're giving dates and for things that we've been wanting from them.
And for Move, they're at least going to that middle ground. When I did my predictions before E3 about who was going to win, I said whoever was going to win was the one who was going to push off its technology the best. You had Sony with its Move, you had Microsoft's with Kinect, and you had Nintendo with the 3DS.
Yes.
Sony pushed the Move as an in-between between what Microsoft was offering and Nintendo was offering. And it did a good job doing that. But at the same time, they also fell between themselves and their 3D focus.
Yes.
They didn't have a focus.
And that was all over the place.
And so if they really were pushing Move, they may have actually done better, but they actually ended up scrambling amongst themselves. Microsoft's Kinect was so heavily casually based that that the hardcore base that goes to E3 would look upon it and go, I don't know.
I don't know why they did that.
Meanwhile, Nintendo comes out with the 3DS, announces a new major IP, well, not a new IP, but rather a remake of an IP, and then goes on to say, we also have a casual game, and then we go on to announce all these third parties that are supporting it out of the gate. That, amongst all that, really just sums it up, that Nintendo pushed 3DS better than the other two. And that, combined with the huge software lineup they have coming up in the next year, I'd say that's why Nintendo won.
For me, I think the reason why I won was because of what was actually shown that was new. I think we've seen a lot of stuff from Sony and Microsoft before that. Like they had the Kinect thing before their conference, and that really kind of shunned everyone else. Like, well, they were expecting new things, but they didn't see new things, so that's why people didn't like that. And I think it was kind of weird how they didn't have any hardcore games for it, even though there probably are hardcore games for it. And Sony, they had put this, they mentioned it, and they talked about it once in a while, but it's like the PSP. That's what it was like. It was a completely different system, and they weren't even bothering to support it that much. And for Nintendo, the Nintendo DS, and for Nintendo and their 3DS, they announced two games, a hardcore and a casual game, and they even showcased a bunch of support, and I think the software is what's going to sell it, and that's what they saw. They showed the software, although they didn't show it physically there. It's all going to be at the show floor.
What I'm seeing here is that
they said games make it, and I think games are what make it, and I think it's what we're going to have to see.
On top of that, I just like to say this. If anything is proven from these conferences, you have to hide your biggest guns. Don't go out there announcing everything at once over the course of months and months when you're going to E3. When you're going to E3, announce new stuff, or else you're going to get people with fatigue.
And as for
you
me,
can announce new stuff over the course of the year, but...
And for me, what I learned from all these shows is that if you're a gamer, you're in heaven. There's games everywhere for every single gamer. If you like games, there's something for you. If you like motion, you got it. If you got online gaming, you got it. If you got 3D gaming, you got it. This is life. This is beautiful. This is everyone E3. Is accepting who you are as gamers, and now we are winning. We are the winners. We are the winners of the conferences.
Kevin Butler said it best himself.
You should go listen to that. It was really good. Bye, everybody.